He spent months clutching a rifle, only to come home and find his own daughter on her knees, eating from the floor. No tears, no screams, just a dry, metallic sound, and a silence that hurt more than any explosion. That scene broke something inside him, because sometimes the man who guards a nation fails to guard his own home. And what she said next, her eyes fixed on nothing, was so cold he would never sleep peacefully again. It was a sweltering August afternoon when Jacob stepped off the bus, his pack on his back and his uniform still smelling of desert dust. The small town of Havenwood looked the same. Crooked telephone poles, kids in flip-flops chasing after a stray ball, and the distant sound of an old radio playing country music. But his house was wrong. The front lawn was overgrown, swallowing the walkway. The windows were shut tight, and the air, even outside, smelled stagnant. Jacob turned the key hastily. The lock groaned in protest, as if resisting. When he pushed the door open, he felt his heart hammer against his ribs for no clear reason. He dropped his pack on the floor and just listened. He heard a dry, repetitive sound, the faint clink of something small against metal. It came from the kitchen. Each step he took felt heavier than the last. The smell grew worse, a mix of dog food, mold, and neglect. When he rounded the corner and looked into the kitchen, time stopped. Leah was kneeling on the floor, hunched over the dog's bowl. She wasn't crying, she wasn't hiding, she was just slowly chewing what little was left inside. Her once white t-shirt was now grimy, hanging down to her thin knees. Her curls were haphazardly tied back, her hands caked in dust. When she lifted her eyes, something in them seemed distant. Jacob froze. For a second, he forgot where he was. The sounds of war roared back into his ears. But what hurt the most was his daughter's silence. Jacob approached slowly, as if his daughter were a wounded animal, ready to bolt. He knelt beside her and reached out, but Leah flinched, instinctively shielding the bowl with her small body. There was no anger in the gesture, just an old, practiced fear. "Hey, it's okay now. It's Daddy," he whispered, his voice cracking. She looked at him with suspicion. She didn't look surprised. She looked confused, as if she couldn't tell if he was real or just another phantom her mind had conjured to endure the loneliness. Jacob swallowed hard. He gently picked her up, lifting her into his arms. She felt impossibly light. Her body was just skin and bone. Leah rested her head on his shoulder, but she didn't hug him back. In the living room, he laid her on the sofa and covered her with a blanket. Then he went to the kitchen, trying to grasp how everything had fallen to this. The dog bowl was nearly empty, and next to it sat a bowl of murky water. The dog, Buddy, was nowhere to be seen. The unplugged refrigerator radiated an unbearable stench. Inside, only rotten leftovers. In the pantry, raw rice was spilled on the floor amid torn packages and empty cans, nothing fit for a child. In the living room, Leah remained silent. She watched her father with hollow eyes, as if wanting to ask, "What took you so long?" But already knowing there was no answer. Jacob sat beside her. He pulled a granola bar from his pack and offered it. She took it, biting into it urgently. But she ate in silence, like someone who had learned not to trust that the next piece would ever come. The television was off, coated in a thick layer of dust. A one-armed doll lay in the corner of the rug. Jacob looked around and saw a house frozen in time, as if no one lived there, but someone was surviving. "Honey, how long have you been here alone?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Leah took a long time to answer. Then, in a murmur, "Aunt Jenna said she'd be right back, but she never came back." Jacob closed his eyes. Jenna was his sister-in-law. She had sworn she would take care of Leah while he was deployed. She had said it with such conviction. "Don't you worry, Jake. She's like a daughter to me." Now, the smiling, well-cared-for girl he'd left behind was on the floor, eating dog food. "Did you try to call anyone?" he pressed. "The phone stopped working and the lights too. After I got scared to go outside, there was a man who would yell every night out there, and I put a chair by the door." Her voice broke. Jacob felt the floor give way beneath him. No grenade could ever explode with more force than those words. The girl shrank back, as if expecting to be scolded, but he said nothing. He just gently took her hand. Then she added, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, "I thought you were never coming back." That's when Jacob understood. It wasn't just hunger. It wasn't just fear. It was the kind of loneliness that carves holes where a childhood used to be. Jacob spent that night on the living room floor, his daughter sleeping on his chest as if the silence between them was safer than any words. Her small body trembled slightly, even under 2 blankets. Every so often she'd let out a soft sigh, almost a muffled sob, and clutch her teddy bear like an anchor. The dawn felt a world away. He didn't sleep a wink. He just watched. In every corner of the house, a new detail of the neglect emerged. Piles of dirty clothes, dust-covered toys, plates stacked in the sink with petrified food. In Leah's room, the drawings taped to the wall were yellowed. In one of them, 2 stick figures sat at a table with plates of food. Above them, a sentence written with great effort. "Today is the day Daddy comes home." Jacob felt his chest tighten. That drawing was old. She had waited for weeks, and at some point, when he didn't show up, she understood that maybe no one was coming. At the bottom of a drawer, he found a school notebook used as a diary. The pages were smudged, the letters shaky. Short sentences. "The power went out today. Auntie didn't come back. Buddy cried, and then he was gone. I drew Daddy so I don't forget his face." He closed the notebook carefully. His hands were shaking, his throat burned. There was no weapon, no battlefield that could prepare a man for this. The war overseas was loud, but this one was made of silent days, empty plates, and eyes that had forgotten how to hope. The next morning, Leah woke up calmer. She sat on the sofa, drawing in silence. This time, there was a house with open windows, a bearded man, and a little girl holding his hand. She didn't say anything, but the drawing did. If this outrages you as much as it did me, if seeing a forgotten child like this tears you up inside too, like this video, and subscribe, because the comeback is still on its way. And what this little girl carries in her heart is going to teach a lot of people what real strength is. That morning, Jacob made a decision without needing to say it aloud. He wasn't going back to his battalion. His mission was different now, and she was sleeping in the bed beside him, clutching her bear, her thin legs sticking out from under the blanket. He went to the kitchen, made weak coffee, toasted stale bread in a pan, and set the table the way he remembered, from when she was too small to reach her plate. Leah appeared barefoot, her hair a tangled mess, her gaze wary. She stopped in the doorway. "Is that for me?" she asked in a small voice. "It's for us," he replied. She sat down slowly, as if still testing reality. She ate in silence, this time without rushing. In the following days, Jacob began to clean the house piece by piece. He took down the grimy curtains, washed the sheets, and opened every window. He cleaned out the fridge, scrubbed the kitchen floor, and disinfected his daughter's toys. Every gesture was a form of apology. Every clean towel, a piece of relearned love. In the garage, he found some old tools and started building a small wooden table. He didn't know why. He just felt a deep need to build something with his own 2 hands. Leah watched everything in silence. Sometimes she just observed. Other times, she would help hold a nail or fetch a piece of sandpaper. When Jacob finished the little table, she ran to her room and came back with a blank sheet of paper. She sat in the chair and drew with intense concentration. It was a simple drawing. An open window, a man with a beard, a smiling girl with a dog in her lap. "You want a dog?" he asked, a faint smile on his face. "I want one who was left all alone too," she replied. Jacob didn't know what to say. He just nodded. That night, she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. The TV was on, the volume low. The sound of rain tapped against the roof. And for the first time since he'd been back, Jacob felt that maybe he was in the right place. 2 days later, Jacob decided to find Jenna. He went to her last known address, a rented house in the back of a large yard. The door was locked. The next-door neighbor said she had left weeks ago and hadn't been heard from since. He walked downtown, searching with the little information he had. After a few uncomfortable questions, he ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town, with peeling paint and the smell of stale cigarettes in the hallway. He knocked on the door of the back room. He waited. When the door opened, he almost didn't recognize her. Jenna looked gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes, wearing an old shirt that barely covered her bony shoulders. Seeing him, she froze. "Jacob," she mumbled, as if she'd been expecting this confrontation. He just stood there. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he just looked. The silence was heavier than any words. "I thought you were never coming back," she finally said. He didn't respond right away. He glanced at the room behind her, a half-packed suitcase on the floor, plastic plates on the dresser, a crumpled blanket. "You lied to me, and you abandoned my daughter." Jenna looked down. "I lost my job, Jacob. I tried to keep going, but everything fell apart. The money ran out, the food ran out, my courage ran out. I left to find help, and I was too ashamed to come back. I failed." He took a deep breath. He wanted to scream, but there was no scream loud enough for that absence. "Do you know what she ate, where she slept, who she had to talk to when the lights went out?" Jenna closed her eyes. The tears came effortlessly. Jacob looked at her for a few more seconds, and then he said, "She still calls you Aunt Jenna." And with that he turned, leaving the door hanging open behind him. Because in that moment, it wasn't anger that burned inside him. It was a pain harder to name, the recognition that sometimes the one who hurts you was also just trying to survive. The next morning, Jenna showed up at Jacob's house. She didn't knock loudly. She didn't call out. She just stood at the door, holding a bag with bread and milk. When Jacob opened it, she didn't ask to come in. She just said, "I'm not here to make excuses. I just wanted to know if there's anything I can still do, even if it's from across the street." Before he could answer, Leah appeared in the hallway. She stood still, staring at the woman for several long seconds. She didn't run, she didn't smile, but she didn't back away either. Jenna knelt, her eyes welling up. "I left you alone, Leah. I failed you. I was scared." The little girl remained silent. Then she walked slowly towards her. She leaned close to her ear and whispered something Jacob couldn't hear. Jenna fell apart. She dropped to her knees, covering her face with her hands. She cried like someone who finally understood the true weight of what she had done. Jacob walked over to his daughter and asked softly, "What did you say to her, my love?" Leah looked at the floor and replied, "I told her if she still remembers when she used to call me her little ray of sunshine, then maybe it can still be fixed." Jacob couldn't hold back his tears. In that instant, he understood that what held that house together wasn't instant forgiveness or perfect justice. It was the gesture of a child who, even after being broken, still knew how to recognize when someone was trying to find their way back. Some wars have no gunshots or trenches. They happen inside our homes, in the long absences, in the words left unsaid, in the empty plates that no one ever saw. Jacob came back from his deployment thinking he knew what pain was, but he discovered that the cruelest suffering is the kind that hides in the eyes of a child who no longer cries. Leah didn't ask for explanations, didn't demand promises. She just wanted to know if, this time, someone would stay. And maybe that's what so many childhoods really need. Fewer speeches and more presence, fewer excuses and more shared silence. Jenna made a terrible mistake, yes, but fear is its own kind of abandonment, and anyone who recognizes that has already started to heal. Now, that simple house wasn't perfect, but it smelled of food on the stove, quiet laughter and crayons scattered on the floor. And sometimes healing comes just like that, slowly, stumbling over mistakes, but moving forward with whatever love is left. Because rebuilding isn't about forgetting what was lost. It's about making the decision to stay, even when you know it's going to hurt. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, share it with someone who might need to hear this today. And if you also believe that love is proven by staying, subscribe to hear more real stories just like this one, because sometimes just staying is everything someone needs.